Hello, hello everyone. Good evening. I'm back with some Starship Troopers chapters 7 through 9. And I forgot the most important part of the stream, my book. Oh, let me go get it. Give me a sec. First I gotta fix these little windows here, that way I can see the chat. Hope you're doing well this evening or day, whenever you're watching this. Hope you're doing just fine. Alright, I got the book. And we are good to go. So, let's see. Last time we read, Johnny was saying that he had passed his hump in boot camp. That he was, that pretty much means that he's like ready to graduate. You know, he's prepared to be the soldier that they have trained him to be, you know. So he's all set and ready to go. And I wonder if that means if they're going to be graduating soon. And then also, we had that other guy who, he got like kicked out for, what did he do? He punched one of the officers? I don't recall his name though. I don't know. It's been a while. I was sick and I couldn't read for like 2 weeks, but it's fine. We're gonna go ahead and start with chapter 7. Chapter 7 starts with a short quote. The young recruit is silly, eh? Thinks so suicide. Is lost is gutter devil, is sit got is pride. But day by day they kicks him, which helps him on a bit, till he finds hisself one mornin' with a full and proper kit, gettin' clear o' dirtiness, gettin' done with mess, gettin' shut o' doin' things, rather more or less. And that was from Rudyard Kipling. Never heard the quote, but it's in the book. Okay. I'm not going to talk much more about my boot training. Mostly, it was simply work, but I was squared away. Enough said. But I did want to mention a little about powered suits, partly because I was fascinated by them, and also because that was what led me into trouble. No complaints. I rated what I got. An M.I. lives by his suit the way a canine man lives by and with and on his doggy partner. Powered armor is one half the reason we call ourselves mobile infantry, instead of just infantry. The other half are the spaceships that drop us and capsules we drop in. Our suits give us better eyes, better ears, stronger backs to carry heavier weapons and more ammo, better legs, more intelligence. Intelligence, in the military meaning, a man in a suit can be just as stupid as anybody else. Only, he had better not be. More firepower, greater endurance, less vulnerability. A suit isn't a spacesuit, although it can serve as one. It is not primarily armor, although the Knights of the Round Table were not armored as well as we are. It isn't a tank, but a single M.I. private could take on a squadron of those things and knock them off unassisted if anybody was silly enough to put tanks against M.I. A suit is not a ship, but it can fly. A little. On the other hand, neither spaceships nor atmosphere craft can fight against a man in a suit except by saturation bombing of the area he is in, like burning down a house to get one flea. contrary-wise, we could do many things that no ship, air, submersible, or space can do. There are a dozen different ways of delivering destruction in impersonal wholesale via ships and missiles of one sort or another. Catastrophes so widespread, so unselective that the war is over because that nation or planet has ceased to exist. What we do is entirely different. We make war as personal as a punch in the nose. We can be selective, applying precisely the required amount of pressure at the specified point at a designated time. We've never been told to go down or kill or capture all left-handed redheads in a particular area, but if they told us to, we can. We will. We are the boys who go to a particular place at H hour, occupying a designated terrain, stand on it, dig the enemy out of their holes, force them then and there to surrender or die. We're the bloody infantry, the doughboy, the duckfoot, the foot soldier, who goes where the enemy is and takes him on in person. We've been doing it, with changes in weapons, but very little change in our trade. At least since the time 5,000 years ago when the foot sloggers of Sargon the Great forced the Sumerians to cry uncle. Maybe they'll be able to do without us someday. Maybe some mad genius with myopia, a bulging forehead, and a cybernetic mind will devise a weapon that can go down a hole, pick out the opposition, and force it to surrender or die without killing that gang of your own people they've got imprisoned down there. I wouldn't know. I'm not a genius. I'm an MI. In the meantime, until they build a machine to replace us, my mates can handle that job. And I might be some help on it too. Oh, so he's a cold-blooded killer now, I guess, huh? I just finished boot camp. I'm a tough cookie. Maybe someday they'll get everything nice and tidy, and we'll have that thing we sing about when we ain't a gonna study war no more. Maybe. Maybe the someday. Maybe the same day the leopard will take off his spots and get a job as a Jersey cow. But again, I wouldn't know. I am not a professor of cosmopolitics. I don't know why you said that. I'm an MI. When the government sends me, I go. In between, I catch a lot of sack time. But while they have not yet built a machine to replace us, they've surely thought up some honeys to help us. The suit, in particular. No need to describe what it looks like, since it has been pictured so often. Suited up, you look like a big steel gorilla, armed with gorilla-sized weapons. This may be why a sergeant generally opens his remarks with, "You apes!" However, it seems more likely that Caesar's sergeants used the same honorific. But the suits are considerably stronger than a gorilla. If an MI in a suit swapped hugs with a gorilla, the gorilla would be dead. Crushed. The MI and the suit wouldn't be mussed. The, quote, muscles, the pseudo-musculature, get all the publicity, but it's the control of all that power which merits it. The real genius in the design is that you don't have to control the suit. You just wear it, like your clothes, like skin. Any sort of ship you have to learn to pilot. It takes a long time. A new full set of reflexes, a different and artificial way of thinking. Even riding a bicycle demands an acquired skill, very different from walking, whereas a spaceship, oh, brother, I wouldn't live that long. Spaceships are for acrobats, who are also mathematicians. But a suit, you just wear. 2,000 pounds of it, maybe in a full kit, yet The very first time you are fitted into one, you can immediately walk, run, jump, lie down, pick up an egg without breaking it. It takes a trifle of practice, but anything improves with practice. Dance a jig, if you could dance a jig, that is, without a suit, and jump right over the house next door and come down to a feather landing. The secret lies in negative feedback and amplification. Don't ask me to sketch the circuitry of a suit. I can't. But I understand that some very good concert violinists can't build a violin either. I can do field maintenance and field repairs and check off the 347 items from cold to ready to wear, and that's all a dumb MI is expected to do. But if my suit gets really sick, I call the doctor. A doctor of science. Electromechanical engineering, who is a staff naval officer, usually a lieutenant, red captain for our ranks, and is part of the ship's company of the troop transport, or who is reluctantly assigned to a regimental headquarters at Camp Curry, a fate worse than death to a Navy man. But if you really are interested in the prints and stereos and schematics of a suit's physiology, you can find most of it, the unclassified part, in any fairly large public library. For the small amount that is classified, you must look up a reliable enemy agent. Reliable, I say, because spies are a tricky lot. He's likely to sell you the parts you could get free from the public library. But here is how it works, minus the diagrams. The inside of the suit is a mass of pressure receptors, hundreds of them. You push with the heel of your hand. The suit feels it, amplifies it, pushes with you to take the pressure off the receptors that gave the order to push. That's confusing, but negative feedback is always a confusing idea the first time, even though your body has been doing it ever since you quit kicking helplessly as a baby. Young children are still learning it. That's why they are clumsy. Adolescents and adults do it without knowing they ever learned it. And a man with Parkinson's disease has damaged his circuits for it. The suit has feedback which causes it to match any motion you make. Exactly, but with a great force. Controlled force. Force controlled without your having to think about it. You jump, that heavy suit jumps, but higher than you can jump in your skin. Jump really hard, and the suit's jets cut in, amplifying what the suit's leg muscles did, giving you a 3-jet shove. The axis of pressure of which passes through your center of mass. So, you jump over that house next door, which makes you come down as fast as you went up, which the suit notes through your proximity and closing gear, a sort of simple-minded radar resembling a proximity fuse, and therefore cuts in the jets again just the right amount to cushion your landing without your having to think about it. And that is the beauty of a powered suit. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to drive it, fly it, con it, operate it. You just wear it, and it takes orders directly from your muscles and does for you what your muscles are trying to do. This leaves you with your whole mind free to handle your weapons and notice what is going on around you, which is supremely important to an infantryman who wants to die in bed. If you load a mudfoot down with a lot of gadgets that he has to watch, somebody, a lot more simply equipped, say with a stone axe, will sneak up and bash his head in while he is trying to read a veneer. Jeez. Your eyes and your ears are rigged to help you without cluttering up your attention too. So you have 3 audio circuits, common in a marauder suit. The frequency control to maintain tactical security is very complex. At least two frequencies for each circuit, both of which are necessary for any signal at all, and which each of which wobbles under the control of a cesium clock, timed to a microsecond with the other hand. But all this is no problem of yours. You want circuit A to your squad leader. You bite down once. For circuit B, bite down twice, and so on. The mic is taped to your throat. The plugs are in your ears and can't be jarred out. Just ask. Besides that, outside mics on each side of your helmet give you a binaural hearing for your immediate surroundings, just as if your head were bare. Or you can suppress any noisy neighbors and not miss what your platoon leader is saying simply by turning your head. Since your head is the one part of your body not involved in the pressure receptors controlling the suit's muscles, you use your head, your jaw muscles, your chin, your neck to switch things for you and thereby leave your hands free to fight. A chin plate handles all visual displays the way the jaw switch handles the audios. Oh my god. All displays are thrown on a mirror in front of your forehead from where the work is actually going on above and back of your head. All this helmet gear makes you look like a hydrocephalic gorilla, but with luck, the enemy won't live long enough to be offended by your appearance. And it is a very convenient arrangement. You can flip through your several types of radar displays quicker than you can change channels to avoid a commercial. Catch a range and bearing. Locate your boss. Check your flankman. Whatever. If you toss your head like a horse bothered by a fly, your infrared snoopers go up on your forehead. Toss it again, they come down. If you let go of your rocket launcher, the suit snaps it back until you need it again. No point in discussing water nipples, air supply, gyros, etc. The point to all the arrangements is the same: to leave you free to follow your trade. Slaughter. Of course, these things do require practice, and you do practice until picking the right circuit is as automatic as brushing your teeth, and so on. But simply wearing the suit, moving in it, requires almost no practice. You practice jumping because, while you do it with a completely natural motion, you jump higher, faster, further, and stay up longer. The last alone calls for a new orientation. Those seconds in the air can be used. Seconds are jewels beyond price in combat. While off the ground in a jump, you can get a range and bearing, pick a target, talk and receive, fire a weapon, reload, decide to jump again without landing, and override your automatics to cut in the jets again. You can do all of these things in one bounce, with practice. But, in general, powered armor doesn't require practice. It simply does it for you, just the way you were doing it, only better. All but one thing. You can't scratch where it itches. If I ever find a suit that will let me scratch between my shoulder blades, I'll marry it. There are 3 types of MI armor: Marauder, Command, and Scout. Scout suits are very fast and very long range, but lightly armored. Command suits are heavy on the go juice and jump juice, are fast, and can jump high. They have 3 times as much comm and radar gear as other suits, and a dead reckoning tracker. Inertial. It just says inertial. Marauders are for those guys in ranks with a sleepy look. The executioners. Oh man, so we got a whole breakdown of the suits, huh? I didn't think they would actually describe how the suits worked and how they go through the settings and all that. That's pretty cool that they did that. Or that Robert Heinlein did that. There we go. As I may have said, I fell in love with powered armor, even though my first crack at it gave me a strained shoulder. Any day thereafter that my section was allowed to practice in suits was a big day for me. The day I goofed, I had simulated sergeant's chevrons as a simulated section leader and was armed with simulated A-bomb rockets to use in simulated darkness against a simulated enemy. Jeez. Everything. A simulation on a simulation. Okay. That was the trouble. Everything was simulated. But you are required to behave as if it is all real. We were retreating, advancing toward the rear, I mean, and one of the instructors cut the power on one of my men by radio control, making him a helpless casualty. Per MI doctrine, I ordered the pickup. Felt rather cocky that I had managed to get the order out before my number 2 cut out to do it anyhow. Turned to do the next thing I had to do, which was to lie down a simulated atomic ruckus to discourage the simulated enemy overtaking us. Our flank was swinging. I was supposed to fire it sort of diagonally, but with the required spacing to protect my own men from blast, while still putting it in close enough to trouble the bandits. On the bounce, of course. The movement over the terrain and the problem itself had been discussed ahead of time. We were still green. The only variations supposed to be left in were casualties. Doctrine required me to locate exactly by radar beacon my own men who could be affected by the blast. But this all had to be done fast, and I wasn't too sharp at reading those little radar displays anyhow. I cheated just a touch, flipped my snoopers up, and looked. Bare eyes in broad daylight. I left plenty of room. Shucks. I could see the only man affected, half a mile away. And all I had was just a little bitty HE rocket, intended to make a lot of smoke, and not much else. So I picked a spot by eye, took the rocket launcher, and let it fly. Oh, we got Squave in the house. Yo, what's up, man? How you doing? Hope you're having a good one so far. Everything hurts. Oh no, why does everything hurt, dude? Then, oh, let's see. Squave said, we walked about 70 miles last week. Oh my god, dude. You gotta, like, ice your feet. Put them in, like a little ice bath or something, you know? Let's see. And then I went rock climbing today. Bro. Okay, yeah, you gotta take it easy. Make sure you ice everything. Or use, what's it called? Like a menthol rub? Like Tiger Balm or something like that? That'll help. Oh, let's see. Kind of lost my spot. Okay. So, he shot his rocket. Then, I bounced away, feeling smug, no seconds lost, and had my power cut in the air. This doesn't hurt you. It's a delayed action, executed by your landing. I grounded, and there I stuck, squatting, held upright by gyros, but unable to move. You do not not move when surrounded by a ton of metal with your power dead. Instead, I cussed to myself. I hadn't thought that they would make me a casualty when I was supposed to be leading the problem. Shucks. And other comments. I should have known that Sergeant Zim would be monitoring the section leader. He bounced over to me, spoke to me privately on the face-to-face. He suggested that I might be able to get a job sweeping floors since I was too stupid, clumsy, and careless to handle dirty dishes. He discussed my past and probably future and several other things that I did not want to hear about. He ended by saying tonelessly, "How would you like to have Colonel Du Bois see what you've done?" Then he left me. I waited there, crouched over, for 2 hours, until the drill was over. The suit, which had been feather light, real 7-league boots, felt like an iron maiden. At last he returned for me, restored power, and we bounded together at top speed to BHQ. Captain Frankel said less, but it cut more. Then he paused and added in that flat voice officers use when quoting regulations. "You may demand trial by court-martial if such be your choice. How you say?" I gulped and said, "No, sir." Until that moment, I hadn't fully realized just how much trouble I was in. Captain Frankel seemed to relax slightly. "Then we'll see what the regimental commander has to say. Sergeant, escort the prisoner." We walked rapidly over to our HQ, and for the first time I met the regimental commander face to face. And by then, I was sure that I was going to catch a court no matter what. But I remembered sharply how Ted Hendrick had talked himself into one. I said nothing. Major Malloy said a total of 5 words to me. After hearing Sergeant Zim, he said 3 of them. "Is that correct?" I said, "Yes, sir," which ended my part of it. Major Malloy said to Captain Frankel, "Is there any possibility of salvaging this man?" Captain Frankel answered, "I believe so, sir." Major Malloy said, "Then we'll try administrative punishment." Turned to me and said, 5 lashes. Oh man. Wait, this is how he got his lashes? So different from the movie. I mean, in the movie a guy died and then he got lashes. And in this one, he like lifted up his visor, his own visor. Well, they certainly didn't keep me dangling. 15 minutes later, the doctor had completely checked my heart, and the sergeant of the guard was outfitting me with that special shirt which comes off without having to be pulled over the hands, zippered them from the neck down the arms. Assembly for parade had just sounded. I was feeling detached, unreal, which I have learned is one way of being scared right out of your senses. The nightmare hallucination. Zim came into the guard tent just as the call ended. He glanced at the sergeant of the guard, Corporal Jones, and Jones went out. Zim stepped up to me, slipped something into my hand. "Bite on that," he said quietly. "It helps, I know." It was a rubber mouthpiece, such as we use to avoid broken teeth in hand-to-hand combat drill. Zim left. I put it in my mouth. Then they handcuffed me and marched me out. The order read, "In simulated combat, gross negligence, which would in action have caused the death of a teammate." Oh. Oh, are they referring to that guy that he saw? I guess he was close enough to die from his shot. Then they peeled off my shirt and strung me up. Now, here is a very odd thing. A flogging isn't as hard to take as it is to watch. I don't mean it's a picnic. It hurts worse than anything else I've ever had happen to me. And the waits between strokes are worse than the strokes themselves. But the mouthpiece did help, and the only yelp I let out never got past it. Here's the second odd thing. Nobody ever mentioned it to me. Not even other boots, so far as I could see. Zim and the instructors treated me exactly the same afterwards as they had before. From the instant the doctor painted the marks and told me to go back to duty, it was all done with. Completely. I even managed to eat a little at dinner that night and pretend to take part in the jawing at the table. Another thing about administrative punishment. There is no permanent black mark. Those records are destroyed at the end of boot training, and you start clean. The only record is one where it counts most. You don't forget. Jeez. Sounds intense. So he was the reason that the guy in the simulated battle could have died. So it's not like in the movie how that one person died while they were shooting live rounds. Like, it was all simulated. Nobody was supposed to die, but he could have died. So chapter 8. We're starting off with another quote. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Proverbs 22, verse 6. There were other floggings, but darn few. Hendrik was the only man in our regiment to be flogged by sentence of court-martial. The others were administrative punishment, like mine, and for lashes it was necessary to go all the way up to the regimental commander, which a subordinate commander finds distasteful, to put it faintly. Even then, Major Malloy was much more likely to kick the man out, undesirable discharge, than to have the whipping post erected. Oh man. So you just kick them out instead of, like, whipping them. In a way, an administrative flogging is the mildest sort of a compliment. It means that your supervisors think that there is a faint possibility that you just might have the character eventually to make a soldier and a citizen, unlikely as it seems at the moment. I was the only one to get the maximum administrative punishment. None of the others got more than 3 lashes. Nobody else came as close as I did to putting on civilian clothes, but still squeaked by. This is a social distinction of sorts. I don't recommend it. But we had another case, much worse than mine or Ted Hendricks, a really sick-making one, once they erected the gallows. Now, look, get this straight. This case didn't really have anything to do with the Army. The crime didn't take place at Camp Curry, and the placement officer who accepted this boy for MI should turn in his suit. He deserted only 2 days after we arrived at Curry. Ridiculous, of course, but nothing about the case made sense. Why didn't he resign? Desertion, naturally, is one of the 31 crash landings, but the Army doesn't invoke the death penalty for it unless there are special circumstances, such as in the face of the enemy, or something else that turns it from a highly informal way of resigning into something that can't be ignored. The Army makes no effort to find deserters and bring them back. This makes the hardest kind of case. We're all volunteers. We're MI because we want to be. We're proud to be MI, and the MI is proud of us. If a man doesn't feel that way about it, from his calloused feet to his hairy ears, I don't want him in my flank when trouble starts. If I buy a piece of it, I want men around me who will pick me up because they're MI and I'm MI, and my skin means as much to them as their own. I don't want any ersatz soldiers dragging their tails and ducking out when the party gets rough. It's a whole lot safer to have a blank file on your flank than to have an alleged soldier who is nursing the conscript syndrome. So if they run, let 'em run. It's a waste of time and money to fetch them back. Of course, most of them do come back, though it may take them years, in which case the army tiredly lets them have their 50 lashings instead of hanging them, and turns them loose. I suppose it must wear on a man's nerves to be a fugitive when everybody else is either a citizen or a legal resident, even when the police aren't trying to find him. The wicked flee when no man pursueth. The temptation to turn yourself in, take your lumps, and breathe easily again must get to be overpowering. But this boy didn't turn himself in. He was gone 4 months, and I doubt if his own company remembered him, since he had been with them only a couple of days. He was probably just a name without a face, the Dillinger N.L., who had to be reported day after day as absent without leave on the morning muster. Then he killed a baby girl. He was tried and convicted by a local tribunal, but identity checks showed that he was an undischarged soldier. The department had to be notified, and our commanding general at once intervened. He was returned to us, since military law and jurisdiction take precedence over civil code. Why did the general bother? Why didn't he let the local sheriff do the job? In order to teach us a lesson? Not at all. I'm quite sure that our general did not think that uh, any of his boys needed to be nauseated in order not to kill any baby girls. By now, I believe that he would have spared us the sight, had it been possible. We did learn a lesson, though nobody mentioned it at the time, and it was one that takes a long time to sink in until it becomes second nature. The MI take care of their own, no matter what. Dillinger belonged to us. He was still on our rolls. Even though we didn't want him, even though we should never have had him, even though we would have been happy to disclaim him, he was a member of our regiment. We couldn't brush him off and let a sheriff 1,000 miles away handle it. If it has to be done, a man, a real man, shoots his own dog himself. He doesn't hire a proxy who may bungle it. The regimental records said that Dillinger was ours, so taking care of him was our duty. That evening, we marched to the parade grounds at slow march, 60 beats to the minute. Hard to keep step when you're used to 140. While the band played Dirge for the Unmourned. Then Dillinger was marched out, dressed in MI full dress just as we were, and the band played Danny Deever while they stripped off every trace of insignia, even buttons and cap, leaving him in a maroon and light blue suit that was no longer a uniform. The drums held a sustained roll, and it was all over. Let's see. Squave said it's a struggle to figure out how part 3 fits. Oh, you're working on a book, or rather a trilogy of books for one larger story. Hey, very cool, dude. Congrats. Let's see. We passed in review and on home at a fast trot. I didn't think anybody fainted, and I don't think anybody quite got sick, even though most of us didn't eat much dinner that night, and I've never heard the mess tent so quiet. But, grisly as it was the first time I had seen death. First time for most of us. It was not the shock that Ted Hendricks' flogging was. I mean, you couldn't put yourself in Dillinger's place. You didn't have any feeling of, it could have been me. Not counting the technical matter of desertion, Dillinger had committed at least 4 capital crimes. If his victim had lived, he still would have danced Danny Deaver for any one of the three. For any one of the other 3. Kidnapping, demand of ransom, criminal neglect, etc. I had no sympathy for him, and still haven't. That old saw about to understand all is to forgive all is a lot of tripe. Some things, the more you understand, the more you loathe them. My sympathy is reserved for Barbara Ann Enswite, whom I had never seen, and for her parents, who would never again see their little girl. As the band put away their instruments that night, we started 30 days of mourning for Barbara and of disgrace for us, with our colors draped in black. No music at parade. No singing in route march. Only once did I hear anybody complain, and another boot promptly ask him how he would like a full set of lumps. Certainly, it hadn't been our fault, but our business was to guard little girls, not kill them. Our regiment had been dishonored. We had to clean it. We were disgraced, and we felt disgraced. That night, I tried to figure out how such things could be kept from happening. Of course, they hardly ever do nowadays, but even once is way too many. I never did reach an answer that satisfied me. This Dillinger, he looked like anybody else, and his behavior and record couldn't have been too odd, or he would never have reached Camp Curry in the first place. I suppose he was one of those pathological personalities you read about. No way to spot him. Well, if there was no way to keep it from happening once, there was only one sure way to keep it from happening twice, which we had used. If Dillinger had understood what he was doing, which seemed incredible, then he got what was coming to him. Except that it seemed a shame that he hadn't suffered as much as had little Barbara Ann. He practically hadn't suffered at all. But suppose, as seemed more likely, that he was so crazy that he had never been aware that he was doing anything wrong. What then? Well, we shoot mad dogs, don't we? Yes. But being crazy that way is a sickness. I couldn't see but 2 possibilities. Either he couldn't be made well, in which case he was better dead for his own sake and for the safety of others, or he could be treated and made sane, in which case, it seemed to me, if he ever became sane enough for civilized society and thought over what he had done while he was sick, what could be left for him but suicide? How could he live with himself? And suppose he escaped before he was cured and did the same thing again, and maybe again. How do you explain that to bereaved parents in view of his record? I couldn't see but one answer. I found myself mulling over a discussion in our class in history and moral philosophy. Mr. Du Bois was talking about the disorders that preceded the breakup of the North American Republic back in the 20th century. According to him, there was a time just before they went down the drain when such crimes as Dillinger's were as common as dogfights. The terror had not been just in North America. Russia and the British Isles had it too, as well as other places, but it reached its peak in North America shortly before things went to pieces. Law-abiding citizens, Du Bois had told us, hardly dared go into a public park at night. To do so was to risk attack by wolf packs of children, armed with chains, knives, homemade guns, bludgeons, to be hurt at least, robbed most certainly, injured for life probably, or even killed. This went on for years, right up to the war between the Russo-Anglo-American alliance and the Chinese hegemony. Murder, drug addiction, larceny, assault, and vandalism were commonplace. Nor were parks the only places. These things happen also on the streets in daylight, on school grounds, even inside school buildings. But parks were so notoriously unsafe that honest people stayed clear of them after dark. I had tried to imagine such things happening in our schools. I simply couldn't. Nor in our parks. A park was a place for fun, not for getting hurt. As for getting killed in one, Mr. Du Bois, didn't they have police? Or courts? They had many more police than we have, and more courts, all overworked. I I guess I don't get it. If a boy in our city had done anything half that bad, well, he and his father would have been flogged side by side, but such things just didn't happen. Mr. Du Bois then demanded of me, "Define a juvenile delinquent." Oh, one of those kids, the the ones who used to beat up people? Wrong. Huh? Well, but the book said, my apologies. Your textbook does so state. But calling a tail a leg does not make the name fit. Juvenile delinquent is a contradiction in terms, one which gives a clue to their problem and their failure to solve it. Have you ever raised a puppy? Yes, sir. Did you housebreak him? Uh, yes, sir. Eventually. It was my slowness in this that caused my mother to rule that dogs must stay out of the house. Ah, yes, your puppy made mistakes. Were you angry? What? Why? He didn't know any better. He was just a puppy. What did you do? Why, I scolded him and rubbed his nose in it and paddled him. Surely he could not understand your words. No, but he could tell I was sore at him. But you just said that you were not angry. Mr. Du Bois had an infuriating way of getting a person mixed up. No, but I had to make him think I was. He had to learn, didn't he? Conceited. But having made it clear to him that you disapproved, how could you be so cruel as to spank him as well? You said the poor beastie didn't know that what he was doing was wrong, yet you inflicted pain. Justify yourself. Are you a sadist? I didn't then know what a sadist was, but I knew pups. Mr. Du Bois, you have to. You scold him so that he knows he's in trouble. You rub his nose in it so that he will know that What trouble, you mean? You paddle him so that he darn well won't do it again, and you have to do it right away. It doesn't do a bit of good to punish him later. You'll just confuse him. Even so, he won't learn from one lesson, so you watch and you catch him again and paddle him still harder. Pretty soon he learns, but it's a waste of breath just to scold him." Then I added, I guess you've never raised pups." "Many. I'm raising a Dachshund now, by your methods. Let's get back to those juvenile criminals. The most vicious, averaged, somewhat younger than you here in this class. And they often started their lawless careers much younger. Let us never forget that puppy. These children were often caught. Police arrested batches each day. Were they scolded? Yes, often scathingly. Were their noses rubbed in it? Rarely. News organs and officials usually kept their names secret. In many places, the law so required for criminals under 18. Were they spanked? Indeed not. Many had never been spanked, even as a small child. There was a widespread belief that spanking, or any punishment involving pain, did a child permanent psychic damage. I had reflected that my father must never have heard of that theory. "Corporal punishment in schools was forbidden by law," he had gone on. "Flogging was lawful as sentence of court only in one small province, Delaware, and there only for a few crimes, and was rarely invoked. It was regarded as cruel and unusual punishment." The boy had mused aloud. "I do not understand objections to cruel and unusual punishment. While a judge should be benevolent in purpose, his awards should cause the criminal to suffer. Else there is no punishment, and pain is the basic mechanism built into us by millions of years of evolution, which safeguards us by warning when something threatens our survival. Why should society refuse to use such a highly perfected survival mechanism?" However, that period was loaded with pre-scientific pseudo-psychological nonsense. As for unusual, punishment must be unusual, or it serves no purpose. He then pointed at his stump at another boy. He then pointed his stump at another boy. "What would happen if a puppy were spanked every hour?" Probably drive him crazy?" "Probably. It certainly will not teach him anything. How long has it been since the principal of this school last had to switch a pupil?" I'm not sure. About 2 years. The kid that swiped. Never mind. Long enough. It means that such punishment is so unusual as to be significant, to deter, to instruct. Back to these young criminals. They probably were not spanked as babies. They certainly were not flogged for their crimes. The usual sequence was, for a first offense, a warning, a scolding, often without a trial. After several offenses, a sentence of confinement, but with sentence suspended, and the youngster placed on probation. A boy might be arrested many times and convicted several times before he was punished, and then it would be merely confinement, with others like him from whom he learned still more criminal habits. If he kept out of major trouble while confined, he could usually evade most of even that mild punishment. But given probation, paroled in the jargon of the times. This incredible sequence could go on for years while his crimes increased in frequency and viciousness. with no punishment whatever save rare, dull, but comfortable confinements. Then, suddenly, usually by law on his 18th birthday, this so-called juvenile delinquent becomes an adult criminal, and sometimes wound up in only weeks or months in a death cell awaiting execution for murder. You, he had singled me out again. Suppose you merely scolded your puppy, never punished him, let him go on making messes in the house, and occasionally locked him up in an outbuilding, but soon let him back into the house with a warning not to do it again. Then, one day, you notice that he is now a grown dog, and still not housebroken, whereupon you whip out a gun and shoot him dead. Comment, please. Why, that's the craziest way to raise a dog I ever heard of. I agree. Or a child. Whose fault would it be? Uh, why, mine, I guess. Again, I agree. But I'm not guessing. Mr. DuBois, a girl blurted out. But why? Why didn't they spank little kids when they needed it and use a good dose of the strap on wait, what? A good dose of the strap on any older ones who deserved it? The sort of lesson they wouldn't forget. I mean, ones who did things really bad. Why not? I don't know, he had answered grimly, except that the time-tested method of instilling social virtue and respect for law in the minds of the young did not appeal to a pre-scientific pseudo-professional class who called themselves social workers, or sometimes child psychologists. It was too simple for them, apparently, since anybody could do it, using only the patience and firmness needed in training a puppy. I have sometimes wondered if they cherished a vested interest in disorder, but that is unlikely. Adults almost always act from conscious highest motives, no matter what their behavior. But, good heavens, the girl answered. I didn't like being spanked any more than any kid does, but when I needed it, my mama delivered. The only time I ever got a switching in school, I got another one when I got home, and that was years and years ago. I don't ever expect to be hauled up in front of a judge and sentenced to a flogging. You behave yourself, and such things don't happen. I don't see anything wrong with our system. It's a lot better than not being able to walk outdoors for fear of your life. Why, that's horrible. I agree, young lady. The tragic wrongness of what those well-meaning people did, contrasted with what they thought they were doing, goes very deep. They had no scientific theory of morals. They did have a theory of morals, and they tried to live by it. I should not have sneered at their motives, but their theory was wrong. Half of it fuzzy-headed wishful thinking, half of it rationalized charlatanry. The more they assumed that man, sorry, I skipped a line. The more earnest they were, the further it led them astray. You see, they assumed that man was a moral instinct. Sir, I thought... But he does. I have. No, my dear. You have a cultivated conscience, a most carefully trained one. Man has no moral instinct. He is not born with a moral sense. You were not born with it. I was not. And a puppy has none. We acquire moral sense. When we do, through training, experience, and hard sweat of the mind. These unfortunate juvenile criminals were born with none, even as you and I, and they had no chance to acquire any. Their experiences did not permit it. What is moral sense? It is an elaboration of the instinct to survive. The instinct to survive is human nature itself, and every aspect of our personalities derives from it. Anything that conflicts with the survival instinct acts sooner or later to eliminate the individual and thereby fails to show up in future generations. This truth is mathematically demonstrable, everywhere, verifiable. It is the single eternal imperative controlling everything we do. But the instinct to survive, he had gone on, can be cultivated into motivations more subtle and much more complex than the blind brute urge of the individual to stay alive. Young lady, what you miscalled your moral instinct was the instilling in you by your elders of the truth that was that wait oh oh skipped a line. Oh my gosh. Young lady, what you miscalled your moral instinct was the instilling in you by your elders of the truth that survival can be stronger imperatives than that of your own personal survival. Survival of your family, for example, of your children when you have them, of your nation if you struggle that high up the scale, and so on up. A scientifically verifiable theory of morals must be rooted in the individual's instinct to survive, and nowhere else, and must correctly describe the hierarchy of survival, note the motivations at each level, and resolve all conflicts. We have such a theory now. We can solve any moral problem on any level. Self-interest, love of family, duty to country, responsibility toward the human race. We are even developing an exact ethic for extra-human relations. But all moral problems can be illustrated by one misquotation. Greater love hath no man than a mother cat dying to defend her kittens. Once you understand the problem facing that cat and how she solved it, you will then be ready to examine yourself and learn how high up the moral ladder you are capable of climbing. These juvenile criminals hit a low level, born with only the instinct for survival. The highest morality they achieved was a shaky loyalty to a peer group, a street gang. But the do-gooders attempted to appeal to their better natures, to reach them, to spark their moral sense. Tosh! They had no better natures. Experience taught them that they were doing was the way to survive. The puppy never got his spanking. Therefore, what he did with pleasure and success must be moral. The basis of all morality is duty, a concept with the same relation to group that self-interest has to individual. Nobody preached duty to these kids in a way they could understand. That is, with a spanking. But the society they were in told them endlessly about their rights. The results should have been predictable, since a human being has no natural rights of any nature. Mr. Du Bois had paused. Somebody took the bait. Sir, how about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Ah, yes, the unalienable rights. Each year somebody quotes that magnificent poetry. Life? What? Right to life has a man who is drowning in the Pacific? The ocean will not hearken to his cries. What right to life has a man who must die if he is to save his children? If he chooses to save his own life, does he do so as a matter of right? If two men are starving and cannibalism is the only alternative to death, which man's right is unalienable? And is it right? As to liberty, the heroes who signed the great document pledged themselves to buy liberty with their lives. Liberty is never unalienable. It must be redeemed regularly with the blood of patriots, or it always vanishes. Of all the so-called natural human rights that have ever been invented, liberty is least likely to be cheap and is never free of cost. It's like we're getting a history lesson. The third right, the pursuit of happiness. It is indeed unalienable, but it is not a right. It is simply a universal condition, which tyrants cannot take away, nor patriots restore. Cast me into a dungeon, burn me at the stake, crown me king of kings. I can pursue happiness as long as my brain lives. But neither gods nor saints, wise men nor subtle drugs can ensure that I will catch it. Mr. Du Bois then turned to me. I told you that juvenile delinquent is a contradiction in terms. Delinquent means failing in duty, but duty is an adult virtue. Indeed, a juvenile becomes an adult when, and only when, he requires a knowledge of duty and embraces it as dearer than the self-love he was born with. There never was, there cannot be, a juvenile delinquent. But for every juvenile criminal, there are always one or more adult delinquents. People of mature years who either do not know their duty or who, knowing it, fail. And that was the soft spot which destroyed what was in many ways an admirable culture. The junior hoodlums who roamed their streets were symptoms of a greater sickness. Their citizens, all of them counted as such, glorified their mythology of rights and lost track of their duties. No nation so constituted can endure. I wondered how Colonel Du Bois would have classed Dillinger. Was he a juvenile criminal who merited pity even though you had to get rid of him? Or was he an adult delinquent who deserved nothing but contempt? I didn't know. I would never know. The one thing I was sure of was that he would never again kill any little girls. That suited me. I went to sleep. Dang. That was tough, man. Chapter 8 was a roller coaster of emotions. Oh, thank you for the follow. We got a little ball of purr. How are you doing tonight? I hope you're doing well. Thank you for the follow. Alright, let's see. Now we are on chapter 9. Our last chapter for the stream. Let's see. Little ball of purr said, just woke up, sipping my morning coffee. Hey, well, good morning. Hopefully you're having a good one. I hope you have a great day. It's night over here where I'm at, so I'm reading a story before bed. Have you ever read Starship Troopers? You've probably seen the movie, I'm sure. Let's see. I'm gonna take a little water break. Oh no, Per, don't worry about it. I, you know, I encourage people to, chat even when I'm reading. We're all enjoying the book. I haven't read the book. This is the first time I'm reading it. So, you know, we get to enjoy the book together. But I can continue on. We are now in chapter 9. It's not too long, just a few pages. Let's see. Per said, I've not read Starship Troopers. Just watched the films. I saw you're already reading my favorite book to read to others, Animal Farm. Yes. Yes, I read all of Animal Farm on Twitch. I have it saved there. I think that was the first book I read on stream. That was a trip, for sure. And I also have 1984 on there. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue. I'm gonna sip this last bit of water. And that's when I know I'm almost done with the stream. I start running out of water. Alright, chapter 9. Off with another quote. We've got no place in this outfit for good losers. We want tough hombres who will go in there and win. Admiral Jonas Ingram, 1926. When we had done all that a mudfoot can do in flat country, we moved into some rough mountains to do still rougher things. The Canadian Rockies between Good Hope Mountain and Mount Waddington. Camp Sergeant Spooky Smith was much like Camp Curry, aside from its rugged setting, but it was much smaller. Well, the 3rd Regiment was much smaller now, too. Less than 400, whereas we had started out with more than 2,000. H Company was now organized as a single platoon, and the battalion paraded as if it was a company. But we were still called H Company, and Zim was company commander, not platoon leader. What the sweat down meant, really, was much more personal instruction. We had more corporal instructors than we had squads, and Sergeant Zim, with only 50 men on his mind instead of the 260 he had started with, kept his Argus eyes on each one of us all the time, even when he wasn't there. At least, if you goofed, it turned out he was standing right behind you. However, the chewing out you got had almost a friendly quality, in a horrid sort of way, because we had changed too, as well as the regiment. The 1 in 5 who was left was almost a soldier, and Zim seemed to be trying to make him into one, instead of running him over the hill. We saw a lot more of Captain Frankel too. He now spent most of his time teaching us instead of behind a desk, and he knew all of us by name and face, and seemed to have a card file in his mind of exactly what progress each man had made on every weapon, every piece of equipment, not to mention your extra duty status, medical record, and whether you had a letter from home lately. He wasn't as severe with us as Zim was. His words were milder, and it took a really stupid stunt to take that friendly grin off his face, but don't let that fool you. There was barrel armor under the grin. He never did figure out which one was the better soldier, Zim or Captain Frankel. I mean, if you took away the insignia and thought of them as privates, unquestionably they were both better soldiers than any of the other instructors. But which was the best? Zim did everything with precision and style, as if he were on parade. Captain Frankel did the same thing with dash and gusto, as if it were a game. The results were about the same, and it never turned out to be as easy as Captain Frankel made it look. We needed the abundance of instructors. Jumping a suit, as I have said, was easy on flat ground. Well, the suit jumps just as high and just as easily in the mountains, but it makes a lot of difference when you have to jump up a vertical granite wall between two close-set fir trees and override your jet control at the last instant. We had 3 major casualties in suit practice in Broken Country. 2 dead and 1 medical retirement. But that rock wall is even tougher without a suit. Tackling with lines and pittons, I didn't really see what use alpine drill was to a cap trooper, but I had learned to keep my mouth shut and try to learn what they shoved at us. I learned it, and it wasn't too hard. If anybody had told me a year earlier that I could go up a solid chunk of rock as flat and as perpendicular as a blank wall of a building, using only a hammer, some silly little steel pins, and a chunk of clothesline, I would have laughed in his face. I'm a C-level type. Correction, I was a C-level type. There had been some changes made. Just how much I had changed, I began to find out. At Camp Sergeant Spooky Smith, we had liberty, to go to town, I mean. Oh, we had liberty after the first month at Camp Curry, too. This meant that on a Sunday afternoon, if you weren't in the duty platoon, you could check out at the orderly tent and walk just as far away from camp as you wished, bearing in mind that you had to be back for evening muster. But there was nothing within walking distance. If you don't count jackrabbits, no girls, no theaters, no dance halls, etc. Nevertheless, liberty even at Camp Curry was no mean privilege. Sometimes it can be very important indeed to be able to go as far away that you can't see a tent, a sergeant, nor even the ugly faces of your best friends among the boots. Not have to put on the bounce about everything. Have time to take out your soul and look at it. You can lose that privilege in several degrees. You can be restricted to camp, or you can be restricted to your own company street, which meant that you couldn't go to the library, nor to what was misleadingly called the recreation tent. Mostly some Parcheesi sets and similar wild excitements. Or you could be under close restriction, required to stay in your tent when your presence was not required elsewhere. This last sort didn't mean much in itself, since it was unusually added to extra duties so demanding that you didn't have any time in your tent other than for sleep anyhow. It was a decoration added like a cherry on top of a dish of ice cream to notify you and the world that you had pulled not some everyday goof-off, but something unbecoming of a member of the M.I., and were thereby unfit to associate with other troopers until you had washed away the stain. But at Camp Spooky, we could go into town. Duty status, conduct status, etc. permitting. Shuttles ran to Vancouver every Sunday morning, right after divine services, which were moved up to 30 minutes after breakfast, and came back again just before supper and again just before taps. The instructors could even spend Saturday night in town or cop a 3-day pass, duty permitting. I had no more than stepped out of the shuttle my first pass. Then I realized in part that I had changed. Johnny didn't fit in any longer. Civilian life, I mean. It all seemed amazingly complex and unbelievably untidy. I'm not running down Vancouver. It's a beautiful city and a lovely setting. The people are charming, and they are used to having the MI in town, and they make a trooper welcome. There's a social center for us downtown where they have dances for us every week and see to it that junior hostesses are on hand to dance with, and senior hostesses to make sure that a shy boy, me, to my amazement, but you try a few months with nothing, no females around but lady jackrabbits, gets introduced and has a partner's feet to step on. But I didn't go to the social center that first pass. Mostly, I stood around and gawked at beautiful buildings, at display windows filled with all manner of unnecessary things, and not a weapon among them. At all those people running around or even strolling, doing exactly as they pleased, and no two of them dressed alike. And at girls. Especially at girls. I realized just how wonderful they were. Look, I've approved of girls from the time I first noticed that the difference was more than just that they dressed differently. So far as I remember, I never did go through that period boys are supposed to go through when they know that girls are different but dislike them. I've always liked girls. But that day, I realized that I had long been taking them for granted. Girls are simply wonderful. Just to stand on a corner and watch them going past is delightful. They don't walk. At least, not what we do when we walk. I don't know how to describe it, but it's much more complex and utterly delightful. They don't move just their feet. Everything moves, and in different directions, and all of it graceful. I might have been standing there yet if a policeman hadn't come by. He sized us up and said, "Howdy, boys. Enjoying yourselves?" I quickly read the ribbons on his chest and was impressed. "Yes, sir." "You don't have to say sir to me. Not much to do here. Why don't you go to the hospitality center?" He gave us the address, pointed the direction, and we started that way. Pat Levy, Kitten Smith, and myself. He called after us, "Have a good time, boys, and stay out of trouble," which was exactly what Sergeant Zim had said to us as we climbed into the shuttle. Let's see, little ball of fur on the face, the little DiCaprio face. But we didn't go there. Pat Levy had lived in the Seattle, the Seattle. Wait, are they in Oregon? I thought they were in Canada. I don't know. Pat Levy had lived in Seattle, when he was a small boy and wanted to take a look at his old hometown. He had money and offered to pay our shuttle fares if we would go with him. I didn't mind, and it was all right. Shuttles ran every 20 minutes, and our passes were not restricted to Vancouver. Smith decided to go along too. Okay, so it is Seattle. I'm just being crazy. Seattle wasn't so very different from Vancouver, and the girls were just as plentiful. I enjoyed it. But Seattle wasn't quite as used to having MI around in droves, and we picked a poor spot to eat dinner, one where we weren't quite so welcome. A bar restaurant down by the docks. Now, look, we weren't drinking. Well, Kitten Smith had repeat one beer with his dinner, but he was never anything but friendly and nice. This is how he got his name. The first time we had hand-to-hand combat, Drill Corporal Jones had said to him disgustingly, "A kitten would have hit me harder than that." The nickname stuck. We were the only uniforms in place. Most of the other customers were merchant marine sailors. Seattle handles an awful lot of surface tonnage. I hadn't known it at the time, but merchant soldiers don't like us. Part of it has to do with the fact that their guilds have tried and tried to get their trade classed as equivalent to federal service, without success, but I understand that some of it goes way back in history. Centuries. Alright, give me 1 second, everybody. I need to get some water. I'm about to die right now. So give me 1 sec. I will be right back. Where is it? There it is. Alright, I am back. Got the water. Hopefully I don't drink all of it before it's time. Alright, let me get another sip. Okay. There were some young fellows there too, about our age. The right age to serve a term. Only they weren't long haired and sloppy and kind of dirty looking. Well, say about the way I looked, I suppose, before I joined up. Presently, we started noticing that at the table behind us, two of these young twerps and two merchant sailors, to judge by clothes, were passing remarks that were intended for us to overhear. I won't try to repeat them. We didn't say anything. Presently, when the remarks were even more personal and the laughs louder and everybody else in the place was keeping quiet and listening, Kitten whispered to me, "Let's get out of here." I caught Pat Levy's eye. He nodded. We had no score to settle. It was one of those pay as you go, get it places. We got up and left. They followed us out. Pat whispered to me, "Watch it." We kept on walking, didn't look back. They charged us. I gave my man a side neck chop as I pivoted and let him fall past me. Swung to help my mates, but it was over. 4 in, 4 down. Kitten had handled 2 of them, and Pat had sort of wrapped the other one around a lamp post from throwing him a little too hard. Somebody, the proprietor, I guess, must have called the police as soon as we stood up to leave, since they arrived almost at once while we were still standing around wondering what to do with the meat. 2 policemen, you know, it was that sort of a neighborhood. The senior of them wanted us to prefer charges, but none of us was willing. Zim had told us to stay out of trouble. Kitten looked blank, and about 15 years old, and said, "I guess they stumbled." "So I see," agreed the police officer, and towed a knife away from the outflung hand of my man, but put it against the curb and broke the blade. "Well, you boys had better run along. further uptown. We left. I was glad that neither Pat nor Kitten wanted to make anything of it. It's a mighty serious thing, a civilian assaulting a member of the armed forces. But what the deuce? The books balanced. They jumped us. They got their lumps. All even. But it's a good thing we never go on past armed, and have been trained to disable without killing, because every bit of it happened by reflex. I didn't believe that they would jump us until they already had, and I didn't do any thinking at all until it was over. But that's how I learned for the first time just how much I had changed. We walked back to the station and caught a shuttle to Vancouver. Let's see, a little ball of purr said, I was curious. Apparently after World War III, some veterans held out in Scotland, which was the start of the federation that eventually unified the world. Huh. I haven't, if they have that in the book, I haven't gotten to that part yet. But that sounds pretty interesting, because they don't really talk about that in the movie, do they? Sounds pretty cool though. Let's see, according to the nerds on Reddit discussing it. Oh, okay. Well, so if it's on Reddit, you know it's a reliable source, okay? Like completely reliable. That's just how it is, you know? So now we know. That's funny if it did actually start in Scotland, because I think they're like, don't they have like a lot of problems or something? Let's see. Per said, if it comes from nerds, I presume it to be slightly more reliable. Yeah, exactly. It has to be, right? I wonder, does it say that in their subreddit? Does it say like legitimately from nerds? Let's see. In the book, it was Russia, Britain, and America against the Chinese. The Chinese won, and out of that, a bunch of veterans in Scotland hung a few guys and instilled their still of governance on the local area, which then spread like wildfire around the world. Oh, interesting. Let's see. No, but it takes one to know one. They're definitely nerds. Oh my god. They're just fans. They're fans of Starship Troopers, you know? Hardcore, die-hard fans, you know? Like, don't get it twisted. Now, it's interesting though, like the the lore to some of these books and to just some of the stories in general, like how it all plays out, you know? And just how creative people can be and also eerily accurate about certain things. All right. We are on the cusp of being completely finished with chapter 9. It's about like a page and a half that's left. And then I will be continuing on with the book next Sunday. Let's see. We started practice drops as soon as we moved to Camp Spooky. A platoon at a time, in rotation. A full platoon, that is. A company. Would shuttle down to the field north of Walla Walla. Go aboard, space, make a drop, go through an exercise, and home on a beacon. A day's work. With 8 companies that gave us not quite a drop each week. And then it gave us a little more than a drop each week as attrition continued. Whereupon the drops got tougher. Over mountains, into the Arctic ice, into the Australian desert, and before we graduated, onto the face of the moon, where your capsule is placed only 100 feet up and explodes as it ejects, and you have to look sharp and land with only your suit. No air, no parachute, and a bad landing can spill your air and kill you. Let's see. Per said, I'm impressed you can manage 3 chapters. My voice used to give out after 2. When I first read Animal Farm and I think it was about 3 chapters. I read for about 2 hours. I had completely lost my voice for about 2, 3 days. But ever since then, I've been able to read about. I think the longest I read was for about 3.5 hours. It was like a makeup stream for missing like a couple days. Dude, I know my voice got torn up in Animal Farm. It was fun though. The sheep were fun. Let's see. Some of the attrition was from casualties, deaths, or injuries, and some of it was just from refusing to enter the capsule, which some did. And that was that. They weren't even chewed out. They were just motioned aside, and that night they were paid off. Even a man who had made several drops might get the panic and refuse. And the instructors were just gentle with him, treated him the way you do a friend who is still ill and won't get well. I never quite refused to enter the capsule, but I certainly learned about the shakes. I always got them. I was scared silly every time. I still am. But you're not a cap trooper unless you drop. They tell a story, probably not true, but about a cap trooper who was sightseeing in Paris. He visited Les Invalides, looked down at Napoleon's coffin, and said to a French guard there, "Who's he?" The Frenchman was properly scandalized. "Monsieur does not know? This is the tomb of Napoleon, Napoleon Bonaparte, the greatest soldier who ever lived." The cap trooper thought about it. Then he asked, "So, where were his drops?" "It is almost certainly not true, because there's a big sign outside that tells you exactly who Napoleon was, but that is how the cap troopers feel about it." Eventually, we graduated. I can see that I've left out almost everything. Not a word about most of our weapons. Nothing about the time we dropped everything and fought a forest fire for 3 days. No mention of the practice alert. That was a real one, only we didn't know it until it was over. Nor about the day the cook tent blew away. In fact, not even any mention of weather. And, believe me, weather is important to a doughboy. Rain, and mud especially, but though weather is important while it happens, it seems to me to be pretty dull to look back on. You could take descriptions of most any sort of weather out of an almanac and stick them in just anywhere. They'll probably fit. The regiment had started with 2009 men. We graduated 187. Of the others, 14 were dead, 1 executed, and his name struck, and the rest resigned, dropped, transferred, medical discharge, etc. Major Malloy made a short speech. We each got a certificate. We passed in review for the last time, and the regiment was disbanded, its colors to be cased until they would be needed, 3 weeks later, to tell another couple of thousand civilians that they were an outfit, not a mob. I was a trained soldier, entitled to put TP in front of my serial number instead of RP. Big day. The biggest I ever had. And that brings us to the end of chapter 9. So our man Johnny graduated basic training. Basic, but he actually did a lot. But yeah, he finally made it. He's a changed man now. He is a man, officially, and a citizen to top it off. He is a trained, was it? Trained soldier, was it? Yeah, trained soldier with the title of TP. I don't know why it's TP. Should be TS, but you know, we're gonna focus on the details here, okay, guys? But yeah. Let's see. Per said, oh yeah, yeah, Animal Farm, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. Let's see, it's funny when you hear your David stories. Oh man, no. Wait, is your name Napoleon? No, I'm kidding. Dude, the Chiefs were freaking great. The very end, when, like, the Chiefs change what they say. Oh, dude. The first time I got to that point, I was like, no way. Like, I honestly kind of, like, my jaw kind of dropped. I was like, no. They've become brainwashed. Oh, man. Let's see. Oh, we got Squeeve over here in YouTube said, I read Animal Farm for English in 10th grade. I didn't like it that much, but it was interesting. It can be there, it can be a little, there's like a little time frame in the book where it gets a little slow and you kind of just have to push through that. And then it starts picking up and you're like, "Oh, okay. Their life kind of sucks." But it was great reading Starship Troopers again. Let's see, I'm looking at the book. I'm halfway through the book. So, I'm figuring in a few chapters, we're probably gonna start getting into the whole bug war, which I'm excited for. I want to see just how good it is. If it's as graphic as it is in the movie. Well, I mean, your imagination can make it more graphic, I suppose, if you want. Let's see. Squave said over here, also while I'm thinking about it, how do you like mystery slash thriller slash horror books? I don't think I have any horror books. I do have some like mystery thriller books. It's more just like, do I got the time to like really read it and think that maybe I might enjoy it? But that's about it, yeah. Let's see, person over here on Kick. I first read it as a young child, around 7 years old, but didn't understand the sub story. Was just a cute book about talking animals. A cute book, yeah. I mean, if you look at the pictures, yeah, the pictures are a little cute, I suppose. Let's see. I'm excited to hear your bug screams and roars during combat. Oh my god, I'm gonna have to look through the book and see if they actually have that. And I'm gonna have to think of like sounds, I guess. I swear, if it says like, I don't know, like it makes clicking sounds or something, I'm gonna have to figure that out. I just turned a little bit into further along into the book, and there's definitely death screams of the characters in the book, so I guess I'll be doing like death screams. Let's see, Squave said, that's the genre of the 3 books I'm trying to write. I was gonna see if you had any tips on how the flow of those stories go. I don't read a lot of books. Well, I do have some, like, thriller, like, mystery books here. And, so I'll crack a few of them open and I'll see how that all works out. I'll see what the whole flow is like and I'll give you the titles or something so you can check them out. Person, oh, good luck with that. With the death screams. Ah, come on, it'll be fine. It'll be a good time, you know? Let's see, your YouTube link doesn't work, by the way. It seems to have the start of the link twice. Oh, that's weird. Okay, I'll have to fix it. Here, let me I'll go to my YouTube right now. And I will post it in the chat. I don't know what's up with my bot or whatever, but for some reason it doesn't. Why is it not doing it? It doesn't put up my links anymore. I don't know why. It's freaking weird. There we go. Here you are. I'm posting it here in the chat for you. Bam. Let's see. I found it through YouTube. Okay, just searching your name. Alright. There, I sent you the link in the chat. That way it could reach you. Cause I don't know, man, technology, it's a little weird, you know. Like I know I'm like a VTuber, but like still, it's still all messy. Alrighty, everyone, that's gonna be it for me. I appreciate all of you for hanging out. I hope you are enjoying the story. I'm enjoying it. I like how it seems like Johnny's not just this like deer in the headlights character, because in the movie he just always had this face of like, I don't understand what's going on. And now it makes sense because you get to hear the internal dialogue in his brain instead of just seeing this blank face. Which I guess is probably what he honestly looks like, you know, considering all. Let's see, Ball of Purr, thank you so much for reading. It was a pleasure to meet you. He was just a pretty boy in the movies. Yeah, right. I agree. I agree because they don't even explain, like they don't go into details as to what he even looks like in the book. You know, that's what's hilarious about it. But yeah, you're welcome, Per. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. I'm glad you're, you know, you get to see all the other books that I've read, you know, and you get to, you know, check them out, you know. Yes, Wave, bye. Have a good night. Goodbye. Let's see. Per said, internal dialogue can matter so much, like with The Martian. The film was terrible compared to the book. A man alone on a planet. Kinda need those inner thinkies. I know, right? Like, I make fun of, like, animes where they always have the person's internal dialogue going, but for certain shows or movies or animes, like, it makes sense why you need it there. So that way they don't just look like an idiot. But yeah, no, I gotcha. Alright, sir. I will talk to you later. Good night, everybody. Or good day, you know, for Per's case, you know. I hope you have a great day. Take it easy today. Everyone else, you take it easy. And I will see you Tuesday with, I don't know, some gameplay or something. Well, I'll see you later. Bye.